Okay, so I'm here at the machine and you can see that I have the seam allowance right here. It's pressed open, and what I'm going to do is move that seam allowance over towards the facing, and I'm going to line up my needle so that the needle goes down into the seam allowance and the facing. I'm going to show you two views. I'll show you the wrong side view, which is the view that we see right now. So you have the bodice on the left and the facing on the right. And we have the seam allowance in the middle facing towards the facing. And so you'll just want to, you can either use a guide foot or you can just find a reference point on your foot so that the seam allowance thread is lined up somewhere on your foot. And then you want to scoot your needle over just about 1 or 2 spaces over. Again, the idea is for you to not see it on the outside of the fabric. So I just scooted my needle over 2 notches. So you can just scoot it over to where you know that it's catching both seam allowances and the facing. And so we're going to stitch down, always back stitching, and then you just stitch all the way down. I like to pull my bodice apart from the facing while I'm stitching, just to give it a really nice flat stitch. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over so you can see it from the other side. Okay, so here I have the fabric flipped over. We have the facing on this side, and here's the bodice. Our understitching is done on this side. I just wanted to give you a different view because you can sew it either way. I like to do it on the right side of the garment just so I can see what I'm stitching. But you always want to make sure that your seam allowance is folded over towards your facing. So make sure that seam allowance is towards the facing. You're not stitching on your bodice. So again, you want to line up your foot to your seam right here. If you have a guide foot, you would just take that metal guide and line it up in the middle of this stitch line or this seam. And then you scoot your needle over to where it's going to stitch on the facing and through both layers of your seam allowance. So you are stitching over 3 layers, your facing and both of your seam allowances. So again, when you stitch, you can pull the fabric apart just gently while it's going down. And that just gives you that nice, really nice flat seam line over here. So I'm going to stitch this all the way down.